Hello, welcome to the Justia Videos channel. In this series of clips about SEO for law firms, we will talk about technical SEO for law firm websites. In this clip, we will review the basics on technical SEO for new and current websites. If you want to see more Justia videos on law practice and legal marketing, be sure to subscribe to our channel.
The technical SEO, to a certain extent, is a little bit, it's not going to be, I'm not going to give a talk, technically like I'm talking to engineers. It's not like an engineering presentation, but it's probably something that you want to take back to your developer to make sure that they're on top of it. So there might be some nomenclature that's a little bit hard to understand, but I'll try to sort of step back and explain it. And I'll also will point out the things that are really important. So some of this is basics. Some of this really, really matters. And I'll sort of just really, I'll note that so that you guys can make that, sort of highlight that part and make sure that you're on top of the things that really count. Some of the stuff, is sort of bread and butter stuff that almost everyone does. So with that, we're going to run through technical SEO. We're going to run through a couple different items here. First, we're just going to cover the basics that you do for mainly for new website setups, but just to make sure that your current website is set up correctly if you have a website, or things that you need to do when you move website providers, just so you have an idea what you need to be on top of. Next, really important, usability and Core Web Vitals. So this is something that Google's really focused on. It's Core Web Vitals looks at how real actual users experience your website. And this matters a lot. So this part really focus on when I'm sort of discussing it. Accessibility and ADA. Obviously, the Department of Justice is focused on this a bit more right now. And it's also good for SEO, though, as well. But this, I'm just going to run through a little bit, mention the Domino's case and show you a couple things you can do for testing your site to make sure it's accessible. As lawyers, your website needs to be accessible because you're offering services to the public. And then the next sort of big one to focus on, especially for lawyers, is the schema markup, especially the stuff that relates to your name, address, and phone number, and frequently asked questions, which gives you a number of opportunities to show up additionally in different places within the Google search results. And then finally, I'll run through some third-party tools and Google tools that you can use just to check out your website to help you make sure things are working fine. So first, let's start with the basics for new websites. Starting with making sure your website's secure. So this is, almost everyone has this right now, but you got to make sure that you're using HTTPS for your website. So that making sure that there's secure communications going from the user to visiting your website. Again, most folks have it. That was not always the case, 10 years or so ago. But for Google, well, first, just to see it, if you look at your browser, you'll see it right there. You'll see a lock up at the top, or you'll see HTTPS. So that's how you can tell if your website's secure on that. For Google, though, this has been a ranking signal since 2014. And Google has probably done more than anyone else to really make sure that communications with the websites are actually secure. By making this a ranking signal and tying this to part of the user experience, Google has gotten most websites, especially those that care about ranking well in Google, to make their website secure. So make sure that you have a secure website and as you set things up. And it's not super difficult to do, but you can make sure your provider is doing it. It used to be that certificates cost money, cost $70 a year, $100 a year. But if you want to get a free certificate, you can go to let'sencrypt.org and they offer free secure certificates. So right there, there's $70 you can save a year by using a secure certificate right at Let's Encrypt. So just wanted to throw that out for you. All right. Normally, HTTPS is simple, but it's a necessity. So make sure that's the case. Next thing is doing redirects, making sure that old pages redirected to new pages, your unsecured domains redirected to your secure domain. So again, I break this up into two different parts. First, on domains. The big item here is making sure that your unsecured domains are doing a redirect, a 301 permanent redirect is sort of the technical term, but doing a redirect to your secure site. Because you might have, HTTP domain.com, your secure site's HTTPS, domain.com. You've got to make sure everything's going to the secure version of it. In general, just for domain choices, I prefer to choose one with a www in front of it because a lot of directories and stuff always tend to either add the www in front or they always tend to link to www. So there's fewer redirect chains if you do that. But not a necessity. You can choose www or just domain.com. But whichever one you choose, you should also make sure the secure version of your domain.com is going to www, or the www one's going to domain.com. Because even if you use domain.com, a lot of people are going to add the www in for your link. And if you don't have that redirected, that'll be a problem. So those things, again, you should make sure that anything that comes to these other domains are going to the proper domain, your final domain, which needs to be a secure website. The biggest issue among these are the unsecure ones not being properly redirected, because then you see two versions of the website. Finally, one that's unsecure that could actually hurt you in the rankings a bit. Finally, if you have a marketing domains, like you're using it, Smith and Jones, but you're using a marketing domain, hirebobthelawyer.com or something like that, make sure that also redirects over to your website. So if you're using marketing domains, unless you have a specialized landing page or something, also make sure that properly goes to your website and is going to the secure version. So anyways, very basic stuff, but the big thing here is double check your unsecure version to make sure that's properly redirecting over, because that tends to be the one that there are issues with. Okay, domains should be pretty straightforward. Main issue for setting up new websites, but no big deal on that. Most people have that set up fine. Web pages. So you're with a provider, you have a web page, and then you move providers, and the web page is exactly the same, but the URL changes, right? Well, you have the old URL, you have the new URL. You got to make sure the old URL redirects the new URL. All right, no big deal. Now, certainly on your own website, in your own blogs, you should go update the links and make sure they're going to the new one. But also on the server side, you should go through, and anything that was coming into the old URL is now redirected to the new one, and do a 301 permanent redirect. That way you get all the Google page rank, all the Google link value is passed on to the new URL. You don't lose any of it. And listen, most providers do that. They look at the old site, they look at the new site, they set the redirects. The issues tends to be when you have multiple, you've switched providers every couple of years, or even every decade, given how long the internet's been around, and you have old URLs out there that have not been properly redirected. So like your website 3 versions ago isn't properly redirected to the new version. Now that might not be a big deal if there aren't links going to the old website, to internal pages of it. But it might be. You might have some outside links to it, or there might be some, maybe someone blogged about your website or blogged about one of your practice areas and put a link in, and all of a sudden that's a 404 error. So if you have old copies of your website, give that to your provider. If your previous provider has the redirects and they're willing to, they should be willing to provide it to their new provider, they should provide that. So at least they get, one additional version of your website down. But let's say, for whatever reason, you have a rough time finding that. What you can do is go into Google Search Console. And again, we'll do a whole webinar on Google Search Console. And we certainly did a bit on Google Search Console when we were talking about links in the last webinar. But in Google Search Console itself, there is a thing where there's a section where you can look at pages, and you can see where there are broken links to your website, where there are 404 not found pages. And you can look through those. And if you see one that looks interesting, like I saw one here for our law site, it looks like someone had put a link in and it was broken, and then I could go explore, see what website was linking to it. I would want to redirect this page over to the proper page. In this case, they just failed to put the full URL in. But you could also do this to find links that were coming to previous versions of your website to make sure they're linking over. In terms of the outside world, in terms of previous versions of your site and broken links, what I really care about, or what you should really care about for SEO purposes, is what Google sees as 404 broken links. So that's what matters. So using Google Search Console to find broken links, these are the ones that Google's saying, these are the ones they're alerting you about. Check these out and fix these. Sometimes you'll have some random spam links with like gibberish. I wouldn't worry too much about those at all. But ones that look real, or ones that are important to you, use the Google Search Console, find those broken links, and redirect them over to the proper page. Okay. Again, most of that stuff's straightforward. You're setting up a new domain, your new website, get your domains all redirected. You got your old page, it's going to a new one. Everyone should, check their website, Google Search Console, for broken links, just see if there's some easy ways to get some SEO value out of links just by fixing them. The last thing to mention is robots.txt and sitemaps when you're setting up a new site. So robots.txt and sitemaps, what these basically do is they help the Google crawler understand your website. So robots.txt is a file that will be on your server. Sitemaps is a separate, normally an XML file that'll list out your pages. So for example, here's the robots.txt file for the White House. All right. And you can see they have user agent star, which means all user agents in this particular instance. Disallow, they're allowing everything to be indexed. So nothing's being broken, being stopped from being indexed in this case. And then they list out a couple of sitemaps. For most law firms, you might only have one sitemap, but this basically will be it. Very rarely will you have pages that you don't want people to index. Sometimes there are exceptions, but for the most part, you want everything to be indexed on your site. So normally the core thing here is you're actually showing the spiders where the White House, I'm sorry, where the sitemap is, in this case for the White House. So that part's fine. This is most of it. So if you have certain sections that you don't want indexed by Google or other search engines, or maybe some administrative pages or some scripts or something, you can explicitly say do not index those pages. Here's a more complicated sitemap. This is for the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission. You can see they have lots of different rules, things that they don't want indexed. So there's a way to run through the rule set here. Again, for most law firms, index everything or just explicitly exclude the stuff that you don't want. You don't have to have something quite this complicated. The one other thing about robots.txt, though, even if you put in, for example, that you don't want a particular page crawled by Google or other search engines, that does not mean that that page will not necessarily show up in the Google search engine index. All it's keeping Google from doing is from crawling your page and sort of indexing that content. But your URL could still be visible by Google and show up in the Google search results if there are outside links to it. So there's two things: keeping your page from being indexed by the crawler. The separate thing is keeping it out of the Google index, even if there's some other website linking to it. And to do that, you're going to need to do meta robots with no index tag on the page, or set it up within the header information. Again, I don't expect lawyers to understand this. Your provider should understand it. And normally a lot of the content management systems like WordPress and some of the others have ways to just check a box and they'll take care of that for you. But just in case you ever wonder, I put some stuff in robots.txt, it's still showing up in Google. You actually have to go a separate set to really keep it out of the full Google search results if you have outside links coming to it. All right. Going back to robots.txt, again, White House allowed everything to be indexed, but they list out their sitemap. You can look at a sitemap. In this case, this is the first one here. This is actually a sitemap of sitemaps. So you can have sitemaps listed as well. And here's what the first sitemap looks like, and it's a number of pages there. For most, and this is the raw text of the sitemap itself. For most law firms, they're just going to have a sitemap listing their pages. You can list up to 50,000 pages in a sitemap. So, I mean, there's not a lot of law firms, probably any law firms have more than 50,000 pages. But if you have more than 50,000 pages, then you would need to break it up into multiple sitemaps. You might also have different sitemaps for different sections of your site. A lot of times we'll see a sitemap for the pages and a separate sitemap for their internal blog, which is fine. It doesn't matter if the pages are in one sitemap or the other. It doesn't matter if you break it up or not. It's not a big deal on that. But in general, for most law firms, you can put all your pages into one sitemap. And the main value of that robots.txt is it makes sure that Google and the other spiders will find that sitemaps file. So that's the core reason you want to make sure you list it in the robots.txt file. If you don't have a sitemap automatically generated by your content management system, you can actually go to different sites. There's a number of places they'll create free ones for you. Here's one at xml-sitemaps.com. You put your URL in, it'll create a sitemap. You didn't need to upload that to your site, but if you need to manually create a sitemap file to be on your website, there are tools that'll do that for you for free. The final thing about sitemaps is, they'll be found by the robot. If you mention them in the robots.txt, they'll be seen by the spiders. So they'll get picked up and they'll list all the pages out. And that's fine. You can certainly do it that way. If you want to explicitly put it into Google or into Bing, you can do it in Bing as well. You can actually enter it into the Google Search Console. There's a little section here on sitemaps, and then it'll give you an update of how well the page is being indexed, looking through the format of the sitemap and different items like that. So there's ways to sort of do that within Google. Again, for most law firms, I would certainly put it in here, put it with Google, and it'll periodically reindex it. But as long as you have a sitemap, you'll be okay on things. All right, there's other attributes with sitemaps in terms of priority and modified date. But for most law firm websites, it's not a big deal. Normally, highest priority is your home page and pages that update. certain pages, but it's not, they're going to index everything once you put it up. The one other item, and I brought this up previously when talking about one of the link webinars, is I actually like to have HTML page. I call it a sitemap page, but basically list all the pages on my website. For most law firms, they don't have that many pages, and even if it's a couple hundred or even 1,000 pages, I like to have one page on my website where every single page is listed out, so that there is some link value somehow going to those pages, and Google finds some outside links. If you just put the page in a sitemap and you have no outside links coming to it, Google will be able to find it and they will be able to index it, but you still have no links coming to that page, right? So it's not going to rank too high because there's no real link value on it. So getting a sitemap page just to make sure everything at least has one link. I mean, hopefully you have a hierarchy of your pages and you're cross-linking to it, as well within the content and within, sort of, parent-child pages in terms of hierarchy. But if for some reason that breaks down anyway, and there's some page out there that's sort of orphaned, not linked up anywhere, if you put it in a HTML sitemap page, this will actually get picked up, and this is actually quite helpful for you. So I recommend doing this.
We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more law practice and legal marketing videos. See you in our next clip.